Hundreds of condominium buildings are at risk for collapse, just like the one that happened in Surfside, Florida in June of 2021. Find out how you can avoid living in or buying in one of these communities. Welcome back to the Crazy About Condos channel. I'm Kris, and on this channel we talk all about condominium living in Sarasota, Florida. In June of 2021, one of the buildings in the Champlain Towers in Surfside, Florida collapsed, with one floor collapsing on top of the next, just like pancakes. It was tragic, and lots of people died. But the saddest thing about it is that could have been avoided with a little planning and a little forethought. Today I'm talking with Patricia Stabler. Patricia is not only a Florida State certified general appraiser, but she has been given the SRA designation by the Appraisal Institute. That designation is for the best of appraisers and has only been earned by less than 1% of appraisers across the country. Patricia is also a reserve specialist, which is a designation granted by the Community Associations Institute for her work in reserve studies. A reserve study is when an expert goes into a condominium community, does an in-depth analysis of its buildings and its amenities to determine if the association and its owners have been focusing on the most important components in that community, are carefully planning for ongoing maintenance and eventual replacement, and are putting away enough money to do so. Patricia, today I'd like to talk to you not only about the events that occurred in Surfside, but also potentially hundreds of other buildings around the state of Florida and the United States that could have tragedies like this. In your experience, how often do you see buildings that have this potential?
Well, during my career, I have so far only seen 4 or 5 buildings where we alerted the engineers about structural damage and potential danger to the building. But it's not only about what is visually available for us to see. It all starts with the paint. When not proper exterior painting and waterproofing is being done for a building, there is always danger of water intrusion. And how often do I get calls from associations? We want you to lengthen our paint cycle from 7 to 10 years. We want to save money. And this is how the tragic starts, because then they use a longer paint cycle. They often use a substandard paint product. Water then has an easier way into the building, and that is how it starts. Water gets in, rebar gets corroded, and that is how the spalling we saw at Surfside, specifically in that pool equipment room, that is how it starts to happen.
So, and with all the new construction guidelines that have come about in the last few years, are newly constructed condos necessarily safer?
Yes, absolutely. The Florida building codes have included many upgrades, and buildings are built today cannot be compared to what we had 30, 40 years ago. However, if a new building does not receive the proper maintenance from the very beginning, the association opens up to potential deferred maintenance in the very beginning. I have seen properties like small high-rises with substandard paint products. Often developers do not use superior paint and use substandard paint product to just get the work done, sell their units out, and turn over. And the association doesn't even have enough money, and at the end of year 5 or year 6, to paint the. That's how it happens. Even with a brand new building, built up to the newest codes, it can happen.
So if somebody is considering buying a condominium, how can they avoid buying in one where these potentials exist?
Well, let me say, if I would go and buy a condominium unit with my knowledge, I would not only inspect the condominium unit, and I recently did a couple of new high-rises where still selling, buying was going on, and I see the potential buyer coming out of the condominium unit completely happy and, oh yeah, super and beautiful, and we're gonna buy this. But no one really thinks about to inspect the heart and lungs of the buildings, which would be every mechanical room. So if I would buy into a condominium unit, I would inspect the elevator room, domestic pump room, fire pump room, the electrical panels, the sprinkler fire risers.
Would a typical home inspector cover the kinds of mechanical inspections you described, like the elevator?
If a buyer orders a home inspection for a condominium unit, the scope of work would not include that for the home inspector, and they should look into either studying the reserve study very well, or getting board permission to talk to the reserve analyst, or hire an engineer.
So part of your reserve study is to determine whether the association has adequate savings,
Yes.
called reserves, for this. How is a buyer to know if there is enough reserves?
Unfortunately, in dollar amounts, there is no fixed number we can apply and say, for example, 20-story high-rise has to have $1 million in the reserves and 500,000 contribution per year. And a mid-rise building has to have 200 in the reserves and maybe a 50,000 contribution. That's unfortunately not possible. The only way to determine if the association is adequately reserved is by preparing a reserve study and knowing the percent funded number. We want to see numbers between 50 and 70%. And the higher risk a building has, the higher the number should be. When it is like a fourplex building or an accumulation of 3 or 4 mid-rise buildings, I often say they can get away with 50 to 55, 60% being funded. But a high-rise with significant more expenses should have a higher percent funded, and we would like to see that at around 70%.
And how often should reserve studies be performed?
From the point of law, there is no requirement. For me as a reserve analyst, I would say when the association is a high-rise community with a budget of $1 million plus, I would recommend the update every year. Smaller associations, as I said before, like an accumulation of a couple of mid-rises or fourplexes, smaller communities, they usually get away with every 3 years. But the point is doing it.
Yeah.
Most of them don't even think about doing a reserve study because they think they can calculate the reserves themselves and are getting away with it.
Well, Patricia, I thank you for your time today. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you if they want to hire you to consult with them on their community?
Very easy. Stabler Appraisal. Google my business. You always find my website very quick. We just rebuilt it. It's lightning fast, and the contact page will get to us via email, and you can reach me anytime.
So if you want to know more about living in a condominium in Sarasota, watch my video called "What Do Condo Fees Cover?" where I explain that not all condo fees are created equal.